Alright, so over the next few episodes, I'm going to be revealing my top 100 NBA players currently. This will be broken down into 10 tiers of 10, and we'll be counting down from 100 all the way to number 1. Before we get into it though, I want to quickly break down exactly how I'm ranking these guys. I'm not just looking at box score, stats, or highlight reels. I'm going a little bit deeper into it. I've got 5 components that I've ranked by importance and weight that make up my base criteria for this list. And with the first one, I've got aggregate value on both ends of the floor. This is about your overall impact on both offense and defense. How valuable are you to a team? And how heavy a load can you actually carry for a team? My second one is versatility and matchup dependence. Can your game adapt? Can you scale up or down? Do you scale up or down in the playoffs without becoming a liability? This is huge for real winning basketball and provides a ton of value for each team. My third one is accomplishments and achievements. Did you have an elite overall season, just this past season? For me, awards and accolades do matter, and how much you achieve in a season individually and with your team, that does matter. And your overall performance and achievements, I believe, should be acknowledged when you're weighting players across the league. My fourth one is portability. Could your skills translate if we put you onto a different team or if you were in a different system? Obviously, basketball is a team sport. Rewarding guys who bring skills that are cohesive with teammates and accentuate team basketball is important to remember when ranking these players. And finally, my least important, but it still holds weight, your durability and availability. It's your classic as well. You can't help your team if you can't play. So staying healthy, conditioned and ready over 82 games and for deep playoff runs is absolutely critical and vital to your value across the league. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Here are my top 100 NBA players, and we're going to start with 100 through 91. And to start, we have the polarizing Dillon Brooks at number 100. For me, Dillon Brooks is one of those continuously aggressive and energy-exerting isolation defenders, and he just provides continual value on the floor, just as a complete defensive stopper. He does a really great job at denying scoring wings. He denies airspace, driving lanes for those big, long, lengthy scorers as well. He has that physical frame to be able to deny those lanes. And for those guys that usually weaponize that over-the-top advantage as jump shooters, he does a really good job at disrupting your comfort and your pull-up rhythm in general. So defensively, that's where he brings the bulk of his value, and that's what he's done across his entire career. Though he just got traded to Phoenix, in Houston this past year, Brooks put together some really incredible production. Talk about the 3-and-D archetype that he brings to the game. He was asked frequently to provide a bit more offensive juice than that role typically does, and he weirdly has a decently high ceiling on what he can bring offensively. He ranked 14th out of 58 guys in three-point percentage of guys that attempted more than 400 threes this season. He drilled just under 40% of his looks and made nearly 3 a game. Relatively efficient as an offensive player with his role off ball. He's got increased value in transition with the pop 3 as well, but he's got that physical traits as well when he's trying to drive in the lane on a one-on-one situation. He's got the occasional post-up threat as well, which was a plus offensive and plus efficiency possession for Houston this past year. He's got the post fade in his arsenal that he can always get to with that physical aggressiveness that he plays with as well. But obviously you have to go back to defense as his biggest calling card. We've already mentioned the physical denial that he provides in the isolation sense. He does lack the explosive speed, and therefore, with his strengths gifts, he's more suited towards guarding, guarding positions 3 through 5. And he can handle the mobility and powerful framed, big athletes because he has that low center of gravity. He's not the most technically sound. His footwork, his lateral movement, his attentiveness off ball can always vary. He's not built to contain shifty guards as well. Guys that can also get great elevation as well on their jumper. He struggled with guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this past year. But overall, with his signature physical look as well, he becomes pretty matchup dependent throughout an 82 games plus a playoffs as well. He's got high highs, but he also can have low lows as a role player. For Brooks, though, when you contribute to a top 2 seed in your conference, as he did majorly for Houston in these past 2 years as well, And he's been a clear starter for them as well. He generally has had plus value on both ends for them as well. He's been able to hold big roles for himself. I think you deserve your credit to be listed as one of the top 100 players in the NBA with a relatively portable and translatable skill set to multiple different basketball scenarios. At 99, we have Cason Wallace, one of the best perimeter defensive talents in our game, and someone that contributed significantly to the title that we just saw OKC win. I think that granted him some leeway into this list as well. He did start multiple games in the finals for them as well, extremely crucial for OKC to continue their defensive switchability and their 5-out offense too. Just this past year for Wallace, he's averaged 8 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. And he started 43 games for the NBA champions and shot a very credible 55% effective field goal percentage as someone who primarily lived off extending and finishing advantages as an off-ball piece in the offense. And Cason Wallace is extremely talented as an athlete. And besides the weaponization of this athleticism as a defensive piece, he showed the athletic prowess that he has in spurts as a transition scorer throughout the regular season, providing spacing as a timely cutter, and someone that could be utilized in multiple funky ways, like his ability to provide touch screen and provide some roll man value as that passer, and also a guy with efficient touch in the paint as well. The connective passing, the smart shot selection, the sufficient offensive skill as well, all of that allowed him to satisfy a credible offensive value. But we all know defensively is where he's proven to be the hound that he can be on both on and off the ball. And he showcased that throughout the entire playoffs. And in terms of the help side athleticism and the closeout speed, the balance on those closeouts as well, it's something that OKC utilized majorly as his ability to pressure and double the post and on drives with absolute ease, whilst also being an intelligent and cohesive rotation defender with his lightning fast speed that provides insane team value as well. It's not just the on-the-ball stuff, it's the off-the-ball stuff that makes him such a great defensive player. He also had some of the best hands in basketball this past season. He ranked third in steals per game by players to have played at least 65 games. He blew up actions continually, blew up handoffs, skip passes, one of the most effective doublers in the game with his hand-eye coordination, especially when he's able to swipe and clog passing lanes for defenders with his length as well. Cason in his second season, he's been the epitome of maturity for a team that just won the title. He's currently held back by his skill set limitations. Obviously, the reliability of his jumper, the high-level closeout attacking skill set he does lack. But he understands these weaknesses that he does have, and he makes accurate decisions when he does get the ball, whether that be extending advantages, driving and kicking to a better ball handling threat, using his speed and vision to his advantage as a multifaceted pick and roll threat, as a ball handler or mismatch attacker, and he can play at any pace as well. And his contributions to a defensive tyrant and the eventual NBA champs, I think, deserves the acknowledgement of the top 100 list, and he ranks at 99. At 98, though, we have Tobias Harris, who has been one of the league's most consistent role players over the last few years, as he's taken his talents over to Detroit in this last year, now as their veteran starting presence. I mean, he just came off a season averaging 14 points and 6 rebounds, 48, 35, 86 splits, relatively average for a starting role player piece that we're looking at. But he offered Detroit the versatile impact that did allow him to contribute in all matchups that Detroit had this season. For Tobias, it's more he brings that physical edge as that intermediate scorer. He gives those powerful body bumps to be able to create that comfortable separation that he does. And he's just he just has that veteran maturity and veteran poise about him that just allows him to connect on those rise-up looks as his predominant avenue of isolation scoring through post-ups. And he also brings a ton of value as a play finisher for Detroit. A lot of variance with his play finishing overall. He's a smart off-ball mover, credible spot-up presence who can provide impact attacking mismatches and weaker defenders. He's got that downhill power as well, but he can also be that decent connective passer who has enough in his toolkit to create credible offense by whatever way he chooses. And that's the thing with Tobias, is that he isn't the most talented player. He actually ranks just in the 45th percentile of spot-up shooters in general, only 34th percentile in isolation possessions and 60th percentile in post-up possessions as well. But the thing with Tobias and what makes a veteran like Harris so valuable are the contributions that he can realistically provide to you across the board. There isn't a specific skill that he doesn't have to at least an average degree in his arsenal, and that makes him relatively matchup resilient as a guy who does have a fluctuating role game to game, and he's had a fluctuating role from when he was nearly an all-star for the Clippers and then he taking his talents to Philadelphia. He's had different roles every single year, and in game to game, those roles can also shift, and his skill set being so diverse is what makes him a very matchup resilient player. Defensively for Tobias, he's been tasked heavily across his career in relation to like his actual physical and athletic advantages. He's not the most athletic guy in the locker room, but he's always been tasked very heavily with big time matchups. On this side of the floor, he kind of uses again that physical presence, and he has decent mobility levels, and matching those together allows him to provide quite an effective and serviceable role, taking on more those leading wing scorers that he has over his career. In terms of defensively, he kind of plays more balanced, and he tends to be able to absorb contact extremely well. As a forward, he's got the frame and footwork to be able to do so as well. Though not one of the elite defenders in the league, he is very stable on that end. And I mean, for Tobias, we're talking about a guy that just impacts winning in multiple different areas, and there is a certain value in being able to have that diversified skill set. And that's where Tobias Harris has made his money over his career. Just being a reliable contributor and acting as that experienced leader of a real playoff basketball team. And that's what Tobias has done to earn his reputation here as still a top 100 player in the NBA. Now moving along to Chicago at the 97 spot, we have Josh Giddey, who has put together a pretty productive last season, and he's had multiple productive seasons in his short career already. Giddey's playstyle and skill set required one situation to flourish, and he got it exactly. He's the primary ball handler in an offensive-minded situation in Chicago, and this is where we've been able to see multiple months this season where Josh Giddey could flourish as that lead offensive generator. Obviously, after the trade from OKC to the Bulls, there was really just one thing that was clear about Josh Giddey, and it's that he isn't built to be a role player or like a ceiling raiser for a championship team, or at least just yet. Josh is the type of guy that needs to develop as your lead guard, as a floor-raising offensive maestro. And he's proved, especially towards the later portions of the season, that he might be able to do that in the future. In 25 games between February and April, to end the regular season, Giddey put together an average of 20, 10, and 8 across 3 months on 49, 45, 80 splits. And in those 25 games, the Bulls went a very respectable 13 and 12. And in this stretch, towards the end of the season, obviously you're beating up on a lot of bad teams and a lot of teams that were playing quite unserious basketball towards the later portions of the season. In these games, though, he kind of proved that he should be taken seriously as a possible future piece for the Bulls heading forward into what looks like a very drastic rebuild that is on the horizon. Josh Giddey has real weapons that does make him a very good basketball player in that role. He's got extreme vision, and he's had that since his rookie year, really. He's got quick hitting decision-making. He's got the bullet speed execution as well in his passing arsenal. Josh just has so many passing windows available to him, just in general, and at any moment as well. And his ability to throw those extreme one-hand spears cross-court and towards moving targets just makes him simply remarkable as a passing talent, with a deep arsenal of being able to make reads in traffic, from the top of the key, in transition. And for Giddey now, he's got the passing down pat. He's had it down pat really since his rookie year. It's just more about becoming that reliable on-ball scorer, which should hopefully be able to open up his career as a successful designated offensive engine. The shooting was always the issue, but we've seen huge and major improvements since his rookie year. Though it's still not a reliable pull-up look for him, he's still cashing in over 38% of his catch-and-shoot threes now, and is scoring the ball 0.9 points per isolation possession. So the base that we're looking at for Giddey as a young offensive engine prospect, the base actually isn't awful for him at all. It's more about weaponizing the strength that he does have as a 6'8" and pretty solid athlete. Weaponizing that strength in a more functional manner, through working on the footwork and balance on his drives, being able to distribute his weight as best possible whilst also not losing that momentum. I think that's key for Josh's drives. A lot of his drives currently tend to feature him lowering that center of gravity and lowering his posture when creating that physical contact, but that doesn't allow him to quickly counter his direction immediately. And that does give defenders a split second to recover as Giddey regathers his stance, usually on his drives. By working on that agility and the explosiveness of your footwork and changes of direction, hopefully Giddey can make himself a more consistent, reliable driving force, especially at least against mismatched bigs, where he does have more of a speed and mobility advantage there. Overall, though, for Josh, besides the athleticism piece, Josh is a pretty strong overall offensive talent. The atrocious defensive impact doesn't help his case in these top 100 conversations. He is very matchup dependent as well. He lacks a lot of portability in his playstyle and his lack of, variance of skill set. And that's really what mightily holds him back, to be honest, in these conversations. But he does still sneak in here at 97 with everything that he does do as a floor raiser. And at 96, we have a guy that was recently traded from a top-tier contender, Michael Porter Jr., who has gotten a ton of hate across the media, and deservingly so in spurts. He's had multiple years of from average to awful playoff runs, where his value and shot making have seen to be falling off a cliff, and his lack of versatility gets brutally exposed, as it was once again against OKC and the Clippers, as he only put up 9 points and 5 rebounds on 39, 34, 71 splits in the 2 playoff series that he featured in. Despite, though, the playoff downs that we've seen from Michael Porter Jr., which have also ranged from when Denver won the title, MPJ just provides an offensive impact, which is really rare to find across the league. He's got the size and he's got the over-the-top advantages that he brings as one of the league's premier movement shooters, who holds extreme levels of gravity on the floor and held extreme levels of gravity in what was the most sustainable offensive ecosystem in basketball for multiple years for the champion Denver Nuggets. MPJ, he's had his fair share of injuries, so you got to give him a little bit of leeway here. And these have started really since before he got drafted, so his level of consistency hasn't been very strong across his entire basketball journey. But he still put together a regular season where he averages nearly 20 points and 7 rebounds per game on 50, 40, 77 splits. And in terms of his role, he's nearly mastered that, especially for the regular season portion of things, as a 94th percentile spot-up talent across the league, and he grabs you 1.29 points per possession on spot-up looks. He's one of the elite at his role. In saying that, though, there are drawbacks being a specialist in this league, especially when the shots aren't falling for MPJ. He looks basically lifeless and looks like he's unable to provide any sort of impact. Overall, he's a negative athlete with average physical tools and a very low motor. He's a negative ball mover, a very limited ball handler, an extremely hampered shot and space creator as well. And all those things considered, though, despite the traits that he brings that are negative to his basketball characteristics, he does have innate stature advantages as a movement shooter, which do grant him more quality in every look that he takes on the floor. And therefore, that makes him a strong contributor offensively, as every team needs a guy who can threaten teams with his off-ball gravity, and MPJ did that for the best offense over the past 3 years. At 95, we have a powerful rim pressurer, RJ Barrett, coming in, a guy who does have above-average athletic tools, a guy that can carve up a decent number of driving lanes, and a guy that just came off a season averaging 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists for the subpar Toronto Raptors. In this past year, RJ's pretty much gotten free reign in Toronto, but in saying that, he has shown glimpses of genuine impact as a lead ball handler who's grown pretty greatly as a passer over the past 2 years, and he's learned to be that primary distributing force, being able to create advantages with his physical strength game to game. RJ Barrett doesn't really have any super high ceiling to him, and he's one of those guys who is a limited offensive creator overall. And he doesn't pose the same ceiling that he did coming out of college. But RJ may have shown that he may have enough growth left to see him as a quality tertiary offensive option for a playoff team in the future if he can contribute enough in other areas to deem him playable in playoff scenarios. That means becoming a stronger defensive option. That means becoming a positive off-ball option as well. Becoming an intelligent spacer. If you're not a great shooter, being able to provide impact on the margins as a cutter and as a screen man as well. Being a ball mover as well. And because you're a limited offensive creator, you need to be able to provide value when you aren't in positions to succeed on ball. And that's something that we're going to have to see RJ do a bit more as Scotty Barnes takes a bit more on-ball reps as well, as Brandon Ingram takes a bit more fair share of the ball. Same with Emmanuel Quickley as well. Going to have to see how he can implement himself as a positive role player who can contribute on the margins using his physical and athletic skill set that he does have. There's still a ton of work that RJ needs to do in order to make him like a worthy option for a contending team. But as a talent in the realm of mediocre volume on-ball creators, you were talking about guys like Jalen Green, Anthony Simons, Jordan Poole. In my opinion, RJ brings a greater physical impact. He's got some real passing and advantage creation tools that have a more stable and matchup resilient feel to them. He's not just relying on the jump shooting to create the bulk of his production. And in my opinion, Barrett has really put together some admirable time for the Raptors and deserves some credit here as a guy who I view as near the top list of these guys who are mediocre on-ball creators. At 94, we get one of the best bench players in the NBA who just came off a finals run as possibly the second most impactful player for his team in the finals, and that is TJ McConnell. After an extremely impactful playoff stint for TJ, again asserting himself as one of the league's premier backup point guards in a system that encourages everything that he brings on the court, TJ no doubt deserves a placing on the top 100 lists and deserves to be respected as one of the best role players that we have in the NBA. TJ is one of those sustainable shot hunters. He's a guy that loves attacking with his nimble and agile frame to be able to hunt those tight angles that usually are too slight for most players and most point guards. And that really is his innate advantage as a shot creator, which he has that advantage game to game and matchup to matchup. He has that explosive speed. He's got the physical intensity as well to hunt almost any driving lane. And that does create the bulk of his advantage creation off the bench. For TJ, he just averaged 9 points and 4 assists on 53% effective field goal percentage in the regular season. But in the final series, we saw him rise up to maybe a top 3 impact player for the Pacers, averaging we saw an extremely gutsy 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists with 2 steals in only 20 minutes of game time, shooting 55, 60, 78 splits. And he helped give Indiana a real fighting chance with his surges of unstoppable rim pressure. And we saw throughout that series, OKC's point of attack defense were basically helpless in denying his relentless driving attack game to game as well. And we saw that all the way up to game 7 as well. We're talking about a guy as well who has such a supreme skill set within the paint. This guy made 69% of his mid-range attempts in the playoffs on 32 attempts. And this is a guy that was giving his team sustainable offensive quality whenever he touched the floor. And he was a major catalyst in that Game 7 push against OKC and damn nearly brought them back into that game to win Game 7 in that third quarter. In terms of the season that McConnell has put together, we're talking about a guy that's contributed greatly to a finals team. A guy that has extreme durability and a guy that weaponizes his undeniable physical trait, which is that nimble piece as well. Being able to intelligently weaponize that trait game to game, matchup to matchup, and a guy that's been able to produce consistently throughout the entire year. In that regard, I think TJ McConnell deserves recognition as one of the league's premier bench role players. At 93, we have a guy that may be in trade talks soon, a guy who just got a recent contract extension, but he's on a team that has an overhaul of athletic two-way bigs, and that is Daniel Gafford for the Dallas Mavericks at the moment. Daniel Gafford over the past 2 seasons since entering Dallas has been one of the league's most talented athletes at the 5 spot. We're talking about a guy that legitimately contributed to winning basketball for, again, now the 2nd season in a row. And a guy that is one of the best vertical spacers in our game. A guy that provides immense value as a roll man and as a shot blocker. A guy that does bring supreme mobility and athleticism as a role player at the 5 spot. Daniel Gafford doesn't really have a super versatile skill set. He does have great hands. He's got exceptional catch radius where he can finish and convert almost anything. He's an extreme above the rim athlete, great coordination and reliable enough touch as a 65th percentile roll man scorer, and a guy that makes over 74% of his looks in the restricted area, and a guy that also makes over 54% of his looks in the paint non-restricted area as well. The mobility and the quick leaping abilities for Daniel Gafford are what allow him to dominate on the margins. He's highly efficient and he gets a ton of easy stuff. He's a 98th percentile transition finisher and is an 89th percentile putback scorer in this league. Though not the diverse skill set that he has, Daniel Gafford is an extremely talented offensive piece. He's got extreme touch. He's got that mobility and athletic advantage that he has matchup to matchup. And he doesn't shy away from physical battles. And he brings that momentum swaying intensity to his play finishing. And that is something that does give teams a lot of urgency in these big crucial moments, as we've seen him contribute to a finals run before. Gafford's defensive work is relatively matchup dependent. He lacks a lot of base strength and he can't deal with those skilled post bigs consistently, sometimes has lapses in defensive positioning as a designated rim deterrent. But overall, he has shown the ability to contend with longer and rangier bigs, skill bigs as well as being a very talented zoned rim protector. He's got that step up and help speed that allows him to be able to excel in this look as well for Dallas. But overall, Gafford has been more than crucial in giving Dallas a fortified level of athleticism and play finishing in Dallas's short Luka Kyrie era. And no matter if Dallas decide to keep him or not, Daniel Gafford is one of the most talented offensive role players in the interior. At 92, we have Josh Hart, who is one of the do-it-all guys in the NBA. A guy that doesn't do anything to a super impactful level besides the rebounding assistance that he does give you, but a guy that gives you so much on the margins with his motor. And that's the thing with Josh Hart, is that everything that he does is really intensity-based and dependent on his continuous motor that he brings. And he claws and fights for loose possessions, loose balls, potential rebounds. He pushes transition with so much pace and urgency. He cuts extremely hard. He provides a lot of screening value as well as a roll man and trying to provide that inverted impact as well. And he has tried as much as he can to provide spurts of driving pressure to the table as well as a big positioned ball handler. But despite not being extremely skilled in any area, and that's where you can have trouble playing him in important matchups, he does present below average shooting corks. He's got mediocre touch overall around the rim. He does struggle to create consistent shots for himself with a live dribble against basically any single defensive archetype of defender. But he gives you value on the margins in every single matchup. He's just got continuous efforts and energy that he gives you nightly. And the production shows for it. I mean, he just came off a season averaging 14, 10, and 6, whilst playing the most minutes per game in such a trusted role for a playoff team contending for a championship. And he deserves credit for his role and impact in multiple areas. We talk about being a power forward ball handler and the value that he brings on the perimeter as that guy who can provide versatile screen actions, a guy that has real skill as opposed to most roll bigs as far as the touch and speed downhill when he gets the pocket pass. And he also gives you that energetic and physically backed wing defensive impact as well. A guy who can commit to team schemes as an above average helper and perimeter rotator. He's just one of the kings of hustle in the NBA. And he's done this for one of the best teams in the regular season for multiple years in a row now. And now stepping away from that role player archetype, we've got 91 to round out the first 10. We have Coby White from Chicago, who may be Chicago's best overall basketball player. We're talking about a guy who's coming off his first season, averaging over 20 points a game on a very respectable 55% effective field goal percentage. taking nearly 8 threes a game on very relatively good efficiency overall from the perimeter. We're talking about a guy who also claimed a Conference Player of the Month in March. He averaged 28, 5, and 4 in that 15-game stretch, shooting 50, 38, 88 splits in a 9 and 6 15-game stretch to give the Bulls fan base something to be excited about with his running mate Josh Giddey. Coby White brings that spark plug scoring impact. He's that high-volume jump shooter who provides that jump shooting value in all areas. He's a very decent movement and off-ball shooting force. He can create in those looks in either spot-up, handoff, or off-screen actions. He's a guy that is a legitimate pull-up shooter who can make looks out of ISO and pick-and-roll possessions, and is a guy that provides that spacing and deliberate settling in transition as well as a sparking shooter who has a ton of intensity when it comes to hunting those shots. He's a guy that is unique and is an extremely portable asset who can juice any offense because of the shooting versatility that he brings and the on-ball stuff that he brings. Offensively, he's a plus athlete. We've seen spurts where he can integrate some really appealing driving combinations. He's got some great bursts of pace and speed in cramped spaces. He also has that creative flair with his footwork and gathers that help him gain better ulterior looks at the rim, especially when his lanes and angles do get initially cut off. So the scoring overall, though, has never been the issue. It's probably the big bright spot for him and why he makes this list overall. The drawbacks, obviously we know defensively what he doesn't bring, but the drawbacks are usually related to the current playmaking limitations. He still lacks a super shifty and deceptive handle, and that holds him back from reaching guys like Jalen Brunson, those small guards who aren't very athletically gifted. And he's still quite raw at identifying and committing to reads. He's got a very score-first mentality, which has been his core basketball identity since North Carolina. And without any strength, without any over-the-top and no elite athletic advantages, Coby's ceiling as a top-tier offensive option is ultimately capped. In saying this, though, he does give you value with the movement shooting and the shooting threat that he presents, whilst also having a bit more versatility as a scorer with the on-ball penetration strengths that he does have, which has made him quite the talent for Chicago and a guy that may be able to blossom into a future All-Star. And with that last Coby White pick, that wraps up the first batch of my top 100 NBA players from spots 100 through to 91. And stay tuned because we have a lot of big names still to come. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss the next segment. And stay in tune with me on my Instagram @CasualNBAFanatic, and feel free to let me know who you think I ranked too high or too low, or who you think deserves a spot in the next segment. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode when we reveal players 90 through to 81. I'll see you then.